Hello everyone, welcome back to episode 9 of Everything You Need to Know About Boxing. I'm your host Philip, otherwise known as Phil Likes Fights, and first things first, thank you for all the support on my last video. As of recording right now, it's got over 6,000 views, which is absolutely incredible. That really put a lot of wind in my sail, and of course, I had to follow up my most successful video by proceeding to feel utterly sick the past few days, which is why this video is much later than I would have otherwise hoped to have made. But circumstance be as it may, I'm at least glad to have something out before the fights this weekend, even if it is, as of when you guys are going to be watching it, the morning of Saturday. But look, that's all water under the bridge. The main point is, I'm so thankful for anyone who left a like, a comment. If you subscribe to the channel, thank you. Thank you so much. These are small actions, but they really do make this a lot easier to do when, as of right now, I don't really get anything out of it. This is all building up for something, hopefully big in the future, but for right now, if you like what I'm doing, again, a like, a share, a follow, anything like that helps. Of course, you can find me here on YouTube or on Twitter at the same handle, at Phil Likes Fights, all lowercase. But all right, we have a sneaky good weekend of boxing. We also had a fascinating weekend of boxing the past weekend. I have plans to make separate videos breaking down the Ryan Garcia-Rolly Romero fight, as well as the Canelo Alvarez-William Skull fight, and a little mini-series I think that I'm going to be starting. So if you're waiting for my full, unadulterated thoughts on those events, then that is to come. And of course, if you have not yet seen my full reaction video to Naoya Inoue versus Ramon Cardenas, and you're curious my thoughts on that matter, I will link it in the description or perhaps on the side. I'll see if I can get that to work, but that'll be linked in the description below. But before you go click on that, let's get to this video. And first things first, Top Rank Boxing is back with, I think, one of the best fighters in their stable, that being Emmanuel Navarrete. So let me get over here to my normal spot and let's get into the breakdown here. So Emmanuel Navarrete is going to be taking on the Filipino Olympian, the, I believe, 16-0 Charlie Suarez. This is happening over in, where is it? San Diego, California, in the Pechanga Arena. And first things first, I want to establish there's been a little bit of controversy around whether or not Vaquero was able to make weight. Originally, he weighed in at 130.3 pounds, I believe. He was given an extra 45 minutes to make the weight. He ended up making it exactly 130 pounds, 0.0 on the dot. But obviously, having a visibly rough weight cut is not ideal. That can hinder your performance. And I do think that we've seen throughout Navarrete's career, of course, he started out at 122 pounds. Here he is up from 122, 126, now 130. He even, of course, if you remember, tried to go for a world title at 135 pounds, but was ultimately halted by the Ukrainian Denis Berinchik. In any case, will the weight cut be too much of an obstacle to overcome? Just how good is Charlie Suarez? So Charlie Suarez, he's 18-0. He's coming off of a couple of, I'd say, interesting wins. Jorge Castaneda, who he beat in 3 rounds. Then you go down further to see he went to a decision with Louis left hook Coria, and Johan Vasquez. Now, those 2 fights, I think, raise a lot of questions in my eyes. Of course, Johan Vasquez would go on to fight Abdullah Mason. And yes, he did knock down Mason, but he was promptly stopped in the rounds after. Louis Coria, much in the same vein, just got beaten up and stopped badly by Jesse Magdaleno. Whereas Charlie Suarez, really in those fights, yes, he won clear-cut decisions, but 7 rounds to 3, 8 rounds to 2. These are not beat downs where, oh, he didn't get the stoppage, but look at how he imposed himself. I don't really like to trust fighters that they don't really super decisively separate themselves from their competition, especially the competition that Charlie Suarez has been fighting. On top of that, he is 36 years old. You want to know how old Emmanuel Navarrete is? He's 30. 30. Emmanuel Navarrete is just 30 years old with years now of world title experience. If we go and we check the ledger here, let's see. He won his first world title in 2018, which is now 7 years ago. So he's been champion since 23 years old, moved through several divisions. I think he has way too much experience. I understand that he might not be in 100% physical condition, but I think that we've seen Emmanuel Navarrete win much harder fights in his career in not peak physical condition. Emmanuel Navarrete does not make me believe that he is constantly showing up in peak physical form. I think it's much more so to the contrary. However, he does seem to find a way to win. He had that weird draw against Robson Conceição where he got outboxed until he was able to pressure late. And then, of course, Denis Berinchik, that was a sloppy fight, a split decision if my memory holds. But neither one of those losses were super comprehensive. Since then, he's bounced back, had a big knockout win over Oscar Valdez. And I just think that the Oscar Valdez rematch was confidence-inspiring enough that he should be able to beat Charlie Suarez. I'm not even sure if Charlie Suarez beats Oscar Valdez, let alone does he, stop him. So I'm going to have to go here. Navarrete, knockout in the 10th round. I think for a guy like Charlie Suarez, who's got an Olympic background, a lot of his fights, he doesn't really do anything awe-inspiring. And how do you prepare for a guy like Navarrete? I mean, at this point, there's so much tape on him that it's not out of the question. When he was champion the first time around, there was virtually no tape. How do you study? How do you look for his patterns? How do you look to game plan around him? I think now you can game plan for Navarrete, but game planning and fighting are two different things. And I don't think that Suarez has enough experience to navigate the Navarrete puzzle. So give me Navarrete by knockout in the 10th round. And then the co-main to this fight card is also really good. I'm very interested in it. We have Raymond Murataya taking on Zuar Abdullayev. So Murataya 22-0 versus Abdullayev just 20-1. That one loss, of course, being a 4th round knockout to Devin Haney way back when Devin Haney was still at lightweight. Now, I understand getting knocked out against Devin Haney in a 4th round makes you seem very uncredible as opposition, especially with the current reputation of Devin Haney. But I think one thing that's really important to bring to attention here is that Zuar Abdullayev is on a 9-fight win streak since that fight. He's been taking on very good opposition, arguably better opposition than Raymond Murataya has been fighting. Murataya coming off of a good knockout win, but before that had a tricky ho-hum decision against Tevin Farmer. But I think he got a lot of criticism against how he looked against Tevin Farmer. But since then, Farmer has had 2 very close fights with William Zepeda, who was acting like a human chainsaw through the lower ranks of the lightweight division. And honestly, I think there was a case that Tevin Farmer beat William Zepeda the first time around. I think there's less of a case he beat Zepeda the second time around. But I think both of those cases are still more strong than Farmer beating Murataya. I just think that Murataya's performance got so much criticism because we didn't know how much Tevin Farmer had left and how he could really operate at lightweight. So we took Murataya winning a clear-cut 116-112 as a bad sign, when perhaps in hindsight it's actually a good sign. So I did want to talk about that. Also, another thing, so this is for the IBF interim world title. However, considering that the full champion is Vasily Lomachenko, it goes without saying that considering all the talks and rumors about whether or not Lomachenko is going to retire, it's very likely that the winner of this fight gets promoted into full IBF world champion. That being said, the matchup. So Murataya, 28 years of age, Zwar Abdullayev, 31. Both men, I'd say, in their relative physical prime. I don't think that's uncontroversial. I think Zwar has the edge in terms of experience. I think he's fought better competition over longer distances. But one thing I do have to say about Abdullayev is he is a very slow starter. I think it really, if you look at his resume, a lot of his stoppages come after the 6th round if he gets one. He seems to really need to build himself into fights. He tends to let himself lose quiet rounds early on, whereas Murataya is quite the inverse. He's a fast starter. He wants to put the pace on you. I think he's part of that whole Robert Garcia boxing academy where, you want smart pressure fighters behind a good defense, but still on the front foot constantly. And I don't think that will bode well for Zwar Abdullayev. Another thing is, yes, he's on a really good run of form, but certain fights on that streak stick out as not the best look. Recently, or not so recently at this point, but when he fought Jorge Linares, he was arguably down in that fight until finding a Hail Mary stoppage in the 12th round, which Jorge Linares is obviously a really good champion, someone that I think deserves to be talked about with the utmost of regard, but that version of Jorge Linares was not prime Linares, and I don't think that struggling with him proves that you can beat Murataya, who, unless your name is Tevin Farmer, you just have not been close to his level. Murataya tends to like guys who just want to fight you. I think Zwar, he does try to box. He does tend to use his jab almost too much in a sense where he doesn't seem to put together good enough offense. I don't think he has the power advantage either. And I can see Murataya having a lot of success in this fight. So for all those reasons, I'm going to say Murataya wins a clear-cut unanimous decision. I think he might even drop Abdullayev. I think he might hurt Abdullayev in moments, but I think Abdullayev has clearly improved since the Devin Haney fight. I don't think he'll get stopped. This could even be a close fight, potentially, but I think Murataya is just going to be more offensively sound, have the bigger weapons, and defensively minded enough where he won't get caught on the backswing. So, yeah, give me Raymond Murataya here to capture what will all likelihood be his first world title. Also on this undercard, really quick, Andres Cortez is back against Salvador Jimenez, who Jimenez is coming off of a really nondescript loss against Ryan Garner over on a Queensberry show. I expect Cortez to win probably inside the distance, but that is what it is. And also Giovanni Santillan having his second comeback fight since losing at the hands of Brian Norman Jr. I expect him to win that as well. Also, Alan the Kid Garcia is back on this card with his second comeback fight since his knockout loss, so look out for him. But let's keep it moving here. Lee Wood versus Anto Apache Cacace. This is happening over in the UK for the IBO world title, and it's an interesting matchup. It's definitely one that makes a lot of sense for both men at this point in their career. Both men are 36 years of age. However, Lee Wood has so many more miles on his speedometer. Cacace really spent a large portion of his career sort of sitting out for a world title, just not getting the opportunities. I think once he finally sprung that massive upset against Joe Cordina, really had Queensberry fully behind him. Now you've seen him get into bigger fights, bigger spotlights, whereas Lee Wood now has been headlining for a while, since COVID when he fought Zhu Khan and beat him. The other thing is, I don't like that Lee Wood has been out for this long. Lee Wood has not fought since, I believe, oh my God, how long has it been? Since, let's see here, I thought I had it. Yep, since October of 2023, which is a really bad look. Another thing is, I'm not going to get into this too much because I'm going to be careful about what I say on this, but certain matchroom fighters tend to leave the sport for a little while, wink, wink, and then they come back and they don't look as good as they did before they left the sport, wink, wink. Now, I'm not going to say what that fully means, but if you can read in between the lines, then I think you get why they might not have the needles necessary to get wins after they take their random breaks, Joe Cordina and the like. So I think that's definitely in play here. Also, Cacace, really long. I think Lee Wood has actually benefited from having a reach advantage over his last few opponents. He's definitely seemed like the longer fighter, but I think Anthony Cacace, longer, I think better jab. I think also faster. Lee Wood has not looked particularly fast his last few fights. In fact, a lot of the times his legs seem to be stuck in the mud until he really gets going. We saw that in the last fight against Josh Warrington and the first fight against Mauricio Lara, where he was just getting caught all over the place. For all these reasons, I understand that they're building this fight to be a war. I just don't see it that way. I think Cacace is a clear favorite here, and I think Lee Wood is going to have a surprising flat performance. I expect Cacace to comprehensively outbox him. Give me Cacace by unanimous decision, where he just realizes that he's winning a nondescript fight. Lee Wood really doesn't have too much for him, and he's able to win on the back foot. I mean, Lee Wood doesn't really like to get boxed. I think we saw that a little bit early on in the Mike Conlan fight. And yeah, I expect Cacace to win here pretty comfortably. A Lee Wood win, despite all the joy Lee Wood has brought me over his career the last few years. I really don't expect him to win in this fight. Okay, moving on. There's a couple of really good undercard fights. Liam Davies is back since his upset loss to Shabazz Massoud. He's taking on Kurt Walker, but I don't think Kurt Walker is nearly on the level of a Shabazz Massoud. Give me Davies by knockout in the 8th. I think it'll be competitive early on, but I think Walker will tire out and Davies will be able to land bigger shots. Look for a knockout there. Also, Ezra Taylor versus Troy Jones. These are two unbeaten British light heavyweights putting it all on the line. You got to love that kind of aggressive matchmaking. But Troy Jones, I do think that he's been good to this point, but I think Ezra Taylor is one of those fighters where I've had him penciled in for a while. I think he's been set up to do really big things in the sport. And I don't expect Troy Jones to be the reason why he doesn't make it to that next British level where you're talking about a Ben Whittaker, you're talking about a Shotgun Pitters, you're talking about that the next upper echelon of a Dan Aziz. I think that's where Ezra Taylor is headed, but I'm not so sure about that for Troy Jones. So give me Ezra Taylor here by knockout in the 7th round. Also on this card, Owen Cooper looking to bounce back from his loss at the hands of Echo Esserman. He's taking on Chris Congo, who has really been missing in action since his win over Florian Marcoux. Yes, he's had 2 wins since then, but they've been really poor 6-round points wins against nobodies on Riyadh season undercards. However, despite how much I like Owen Cooper and his efforts, and he is only 24 years of age, by the way, so he may improve, I think Chris Congo proven himself to be too solid of a boxer. I expect him to win by a wide unanimous decision, where I think Cooper is really short. I don't know if he could move down a division, but he just seems so undersized against average size fighters at welterweight. And I think Congo, he's very long, and I think he'll be able to use that length to box to a comfortable decision. Finally, for some reason, Sam Noakes is fighting a 13-4-1 Patrick Balaz on this card. So Sam Noakes is in a position to get a world title fight. He's top 10 rated in the world. I think he's like a top 3 WBO contender. But for some reason, since he beat Von Mendy for the European title, he's been in really nondescript fights. I know that they were floating the idea of Sam Noakes potentially being the guy to fight Dennis Berinchik before Keyshawn Davis got that opportunity. However, I don't understand why they're giving him this level of matchmaking, but still, I expect Oh, wait, Noakes? No. Hold on. Change this. I don't know why I put UD. No. Okay. Noakes, I'm going to do like KO in the fourth. I don't know why that was that, but official real-time editing. Yeah. Knockout. Okay. Moving on here. Pro Box TV. So, we've got Erickson Lubin taking on Adriel Holmes Jr. for the IBF World Title Eliminator. Of course, the current IBF World Champion in this weight class is the Russian boogeyman, Bakhram Murtazaliyev. Winner of this fight obviously would be in a prime position to fight him for his world title. This is an interesting fight, and it's interesting to me because I don't really understand it. Now, these two have some backstory. They were amateur rivals. Erickson Lubin did beat Adriel Holmes Jr. in the amateurs. But beyond that, I don't really see... I guess I'm going to come out of the gate here. I don't necessarily see a path to victory for Adriel Holmes Jr. But the fact that Pro Box TV... Or not Pro Box TV. The fact that Dimitri Salita, the promoter of Adriel Holmes, has been heavily pushing for this fight... They've fast-tracked him to a world title, is very interesting to me. Holmes is 30, but Erickson Lubin is actually 29 years of age, which was completely shocking to me when I looked that up because it feels like he's been around for absolutely forever. But no, Erickson Lubin technically has the age advantage, which, again, mind-boggling. But Adriel Holmes Jr., he's 17-0. Doesn't really have a key win on his resume to this point. The only thing I can see is, of course, when Erickson Lubin fought Sebastian Fundora. Fundora's length was a huge problem for him. He was able to land uppercuts up close. He was able to get around the guard. He had a lot of success with Lubin where Lubin just wasn't able to answer that reach advantage. And Adriel Holmes Jr., he's 6'2", with a 74.5-inch reach, which is really quite impressive. That's a really impressive build. Of course, if you've watched cards where he's been featured before, they make endless comparisons of him and Tommy Hearns. The only difference is, out of his 17 pro wins, he's only got 6 knockouts, which I think that number would have to be higher for me to think about backing an Erickson Lubin upset, or a Adriel Holmes upset win over Erickson Lubin. Yes, I mean, Lubin didn't look the best over Jesus Ramos Jr., but again, Ramos Jr. is a top contender at the 154-pound weight class. I just think this is a step up too soon, but the only thing is maybe there's something I'm missing. Maybe this is really sneaky, brilliant matchmaking where they know that Holmes is a good matchup against Lubin because of that length, because of that reach. But I just don't see it, especially because sometimes he's matched up against a nondescript opponent where he wins 7 of 10 rounds, takes his foot off the gas, doesn't press for a finish. I don't like that. I prefer fighters that show me a little bit more hustle. So I'm going to have to back Lubin by knockout in the 9th round. I think if he wins this fight, I think he'll win in dominant fashion. And if he dominates, Lubin's got a pretty good career knockout ratio. He only really doesn't tend to stop people who are insanely durable, like a Ramos Jr., like a, oh my goodness, what's his name? Terrell Gaucher, who, I mean, Terrell Gaucher never gets stopped. So, yeah, give me Lubin by knockout in the 9th. You know, also on this card, Najee Lopez is back, Darrell Valsaint, Nicholas Flaws, and also the one person I want to tell you to keep your eye out for is Herbert Conceição Souza. He's a Brazilian Olympian, very, very good fighter. He's taking on Rowdy Legend Montgomery, who just took Maciej Zaleski to a, unanimous decision loss for himself, but a very durable operator. I'm curious to see how Souza looks. I believe this is his United States debut, and I do think that Souza can be something special, so curious to see how he looks. I think he could inject a lot of life into the middleweight division. Have to give him a shout out. Let's move on here to Puma Martinez, or Pumita, I believe, versus Cacace Wood in a rematch. This is going to be a really good fight. I'm looking forward to this. Their first fight was also really good, albeit wide on the scorecards for Martinez. Cacace Wood sort of known as the king of rematches, has several rematches in his career where he's emerged victorious. However, Ioka is also 36 at this point in his career, whereas Martinez, yes, is 33, but I think he's also the fresher fighter of the two. Ioka didn't look the best in his 2 fights against Joshua Franco, especially not in the first fight. Didn't really look his best form against Martinez. I think Martinez has really good aggression. He tends to steal moments. He's good at having the biggest moment of a round that swings it his way. I think he does have the power advantage here. Whereas Ioka can have a flat performance, can maybe not be his best self. And also, even if Martinez begins to get outboxed by Ioka, let's say this time around, we saw in the Jade Bornea fight that Martinez has enough power in this weight class where he can be bailed out by it, hurt his opponent late, have big moments. I've got to back Martinez here for a repeat, even though I understand Ioka is the rematch king and he's a really great champion. Give me Martinez by unanimous decision. Much like the first fight, maybe they both understand what's on the line. Obviously, the winner here is poised to fight the winner of Bam Rodriguez versus Cafu, which has been formally announced now, for the undisputed titles at super flyweight. But yeah, I'm going to have to back Martinez here. I just think a little bit younger, a little bit more consistent for my liking, and I like his hustle. So give me him by unanimous decision. Also on this card, one of the best prospects in all of boxing, Hayato Tsutsumi. He's taking on Jaime Arboleda, who we saw against William Zepeda get steamrolled in 3 rounds. Arboleda has been woefully inactive. He's taken 1 tune-up bout since that 2023 loss against William Zepeda. I expect Tsutsumi to look really good here in what is, I guess, a step up on paper, but I don't believe a step up based on his ability. Give me Tsutsumi by knockout in the 4th round. I also believe that he's made the weight successfully, which was a challenge for him in the past, so I expect a good performance. Finally, last card here before I get out of your hair for the day, but hopefully this is a good one as well. This one all the way over in Africa, Equatorial Guinea, at the Sipopo Congress Center, Malabo. We have a WBC final eliminator in the welterweight division. Suleiman Cissokho and Cacace Kavaliauskas. Both men, I think, have been a little bit waiting around for a big opportunity like this. This fight was supposed to happen in the past. I did some research. I was like, why was that canceled again? Cissokho had broken his hand in sparring, which delayed the bout. Kavaliauskas, yes, he's 36. He's lost twice before. But Cissokho, 33, has been inactive. Arguably, you could say he lost that fight against Tulani Mbenge a few years back. Both men have got decent resumes. I went through just to check, who's fought the better competition. I'd say it's honestly about average. I thought Kavaliauskas looked expertly good against Mikhail Fox. Of course, a really nice win over David Avanesian a few years back. Whereas, again, Cissokho, good wins. Mbenge went his way. He beat Kieran Conway, who's fighting for European titles. I think this will be a really good fight, genuinely. And I typically never check boxing odds, but it was brought up to my attention, and I noticed that Cissokho only minus 170, despite being the fighter who's younger, with the unblemished record. I went back, I studied some tape. I don't know. For some reason, I've got a sneaky feeling that Mean Machine might have one more big performance in him. And I'm going to go out on a limb and say knockout in the 9th round. I think Cissokho has been a little too inactive for my liking, and Mean Machine, he's going to put that pressure on you. And if you have not been active, you're recovering from broken hands, what's going to happen when he's in your face and throwing huge shots? Yes, he lost to Virgil Ortiz and Bud Crawford, but those are excellent, excellent fighters that I believe the same result would happen if either man fought Suleiman Cissokho. So you can't really go and use that against him too much, but Kavaliauskas has good wins. I do think he's quite underrated as a welterweight. So I'm going to pick him here in a slight upset, according to the odds. But again, I don't really like to go off of that. Also on this card, the return of Kevin Lele Sajo, who's been out in super middleweight purgatory, where maybe he's going to fight David Pacheco, and then, oh, maybe he's going to fight this one or that one. But turns out he's fighting Habib Ahmed, who has no business up at light heavyweight, I think, for this fight. If not that, I guess it's at super middle. But again, he's woefully undersized. He's coming off of getting knocked out by light heavyweight contender Ali Ismailov. And Kevin Lele Sajo, I think, has just enough pop to get this guy out of here early. So give me Sajo by knockout in the second round. And hopefully we see him in a real fight next. I don't know what's going on at super middleweight right now. Nobody... I guess maybe because Canelo is still such a financial lottery ticket that you just can't risk your top fighters losing. So we can't risk Diego Pacheco losing. We can't risk that. Oh, goodness me. What is his name? Wow, how am I not remembering? I mean, this is late at night. Oh, Christian and Billy. We can't risk Christian and Billy losing. So for all those reasons, yeah, Sajo by the second round knockout. But I do think that is why super middleweight is a little bit weird at the moment. But look, I'm not going to take too much more of your time. Again, hopefully I'll have more videos up. And again, thank you. Thank you. If you got this far in the video, you might as well drop a like. Least you could do is drop a comment telling me anything. I don't know. And also, I've got my new Nayo Inoue hat. So if you've made it this far and you're hearing my comments about how I got my new Inoue hat, say in the comments, I like your hat. But okay, that's going to be it. I'll stop rambling and let you get on with your day. Hopefully the fights are good. I think they will be. And hopefully another week of good predictions for me. So that's Phil, and I'm signing out. Bye.